friends. It's been a hot minute since I filmed a video, huh? Gosh, I've been slacking. Sorry. But I've been just mostly binge reading. Like, that's literally all I do when I get home from work. And I'm also getting ready for Book Expo. I'm so excited. The month of May. Okay, so the month of May, I'm just gonna go ahead and dedicate to my Kindle because almost all the books that I read this month were on my Kindle. I read so much urban fantasy. That is what I was craving. That is what I wanted to read, so that's what I read. I read a lot of urban fantasy paranormal romance this month, and I am super happy with my decision. Yeah, had a good reading month. Yeah, let's jump into it. Okay, so May was really the entirety of the year so far has been just like waiting for A Court of Wings and Ruin. Came out at the very beginning of May, and then after, I was terrified of falling into a reading slump, so I just started binge reading. That's where all the urban fantasy comes from. I love those. Just for me are very easy reads. It's just sort of like you read and forget it. You just like churn through them. So rather than going through each one that I read, I'm just gonna list them all for you. Here we go. Started with the Kate Daniels series, which I had read last year and then stopped like halfway through, but this year I went all the way. So, of the Kate Daniels books, these are the ones I read. Magic Bites, Magic Burns, Magic Strikes, Magic Bleeds, Magic Slays, Gunmetal Magic, Magic Rises, Magic Breaks. So, 1 through 7, and then a couple novellas in the middle. I love Kate Daniels! Next series, Nalini Singh. So I started her Guild Hunter series. I just read the first two, Angel's Blood and Archangel's Kiss. Then I read the first two in a trilogy by K.F. Breene, Born in Fire, Raised in Fire. And then I read, so the first in this next group I had read, actually at the very beginning of this year, which I forgot that I read it. But the second one came out, so I reread the first one, and then I read the second one, Keystone and Ravenheart. And then I jumped into the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. I've seen this one around forever and just had never read them, so I read the first 4 of that series. Moon Called, Bloodbound, Iron Kissed, and Bone Crossed. So I read a lot of urban fantasy. What other than urban fantasy did I read this month? Well, first one's probably not hard to guess. I mean, this came out at the beginning of the month. I've been waiting for this. It's one of the most anticipated books. It was probably my most anticipated book of the year. So it's the last in the trilogy that's Feyre and Rhys. There will be more books set in this world, but their story, this was the end. I mean, Sarah J. Maas has just this incredible way of making me care so much about her characters. I thought it was a brilliant end to the series. 5 stars, obviously. This was something that had been asked, was which is my favorite of the trilogy, and I have to give it to A Court of Mist and Fury. That was my favorite of the series, but this one, so good. There's a full review for this one on the blog. For any of the ones that I do have full or mini reviews for, I'll leave the link down in the description. So this one. Next one, another highly anticipated read, came out the same day as Court of Wings and Ruin. That is The Dark Prophecy, the second in the Trials of Apollo series, Rick Riordan. So this is the same world as the Percy Jackson books. The main character, though, is Apollo. So the first one I loved. It took a while to get used to Apollo's voice. So if we remember from the Percy Jackson books themselves, Apollo's very, very full of himself. He's very confident. We'll say confident. And so it took me a while to get used to it. With the second one, in addition to being more prepared for what his voice would be, and also, I mean, he's gone through some growth. Apollo has changed a little bit since the first book. And so I loved this book. We're reunited with some old characters, we're introduced to some new characters, but my favorite thing about this is that the entirety of this book takes place in Indianapolis. If you don't know, that's where I live. And so Indianapolis is not a city where a lot of books are set. I mean, like, I love Indy, it's great. It's just not one of those that a lot of people are familiar with. And so reading this book and coming across those, you know, landmarks or areas that are very familiar to me I thought it was incredible. That was a new experience for me, so that was super fun. So I do have a full review for this one. There is also sort of a mini tour of Indy where you can see some of the places where stuff takes place. Okay, next one is another series ender. That is The Battle Mage by Taryn Matharu. I'm so sorry if I got that wrong. So this is the third in the Summoner series. Summoner. This one I had started reading earlier this year. I had the first two books sitting on my shelves for a while and thought I would wait to start them until this one came out. So this has been marketed as a sort of combination of Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and Pokemon. Oh my gosh, they got it right. It is absolutely a combination of those three. The main character, Fletcher, goes through some incredible character growth in this last book. There's a lot going on. It really wasn't what I expected, but I thought it was a great conclusion to the series. One thing, and I've said this with each of the three, it toes the line right between middle grade and young adult. It's marketed as young adult, and it has some, like, you know, pretty gross, like, battle scenes, but it still kind of feels like middle grade. I don't know. I thought this was great. Again, another full review for this one on the blog. And last but not least, another of my highly anticipated reads of the year, Flame in the Mist by Renee Ahdieh. Okay, so this is the start of a new series. It has been described as a retelling of Mulan, and I will tell you up front, I don't really see it. There are certainly elements between this book and the Mulan story that are the Disney Mulan movie that are similar. I did a full review for this, and all the similarities are listed on the blog. I can't remember them off the top of my head. The plot, like the story itself, completely its own. This, I would not call it a Mulan retelling. It's set in feudal Japan. Start of the story, our main character is off to the Imperial City for her arranged marriage to a prince. Her caravan is attacked and general shenanigans ensue. This was a lovely story. So if you haven't yet read her previous duology, I love her writing. She is a magnificent storyteller, and she has some of the more compelling characters just ever in all of, like, YA fantasy. This is certainly no exception. I will say this is very much a series opener. There are a lot of moving pieces and parts. It is told in multiple points of view, which I love. I happen to love. I think that's fun. It, like, teases all these little pieces of the story. Like, we get elements of a lot of stuff that's happening, and there are a lot of questions. It ends on a cliffhanger. So many twists. So I absolutely look forward to, I don't actually know how many are in this series. Is it a trilogy? Is it a duology? I don't know. I feel like I should know these things. 100% look forward to continuing with the series. Again, full review on the blog. So that was my month of May. I'm gonna go continue scrambling to pack for Book Expo. By the time this goes up, I'll be there and I'll be so excited. Bye. I'm gonna be freaking out the whole time. I just 100% know it. So, like, if you see me at Book Expo, come say hi, but also anticipate, you know, general flailing and, you know, probably a panic attack or two, just because I won't be able to handle all the people.